Now that we've figured out our lighting presets, let's go ahead and finally create our textured material. Let's start by clicking on the shading workspace. Here we have it, and I'll tap the Z key and go to our rendered view. What we really want to do is we want to show objects. So we'll click on object here, and this is our object. Now anything we click on over here, it's going to show that material down below. So if we go to the red, there's our red. If we click on blue, there's our blue. We click on the floor material. So perhaps you recall from a previous video, we created this tileable floor texture from a picture off of my smartphone using this excellent program called PixPlant. By the way, if you search my YouTube channel, you'll find that I do have a video talking about how to use PixPlant as well. So we want to use this texture as the basis for creating a brand new tileable material in Blender. Okay, let's get started. One quick note before we start using the node editor, make sure you jump into your preferences and click on add-ons, search for node, and make sure that node wrangler is checked, and then save your preferences. Let's start by choosing a different material for some of the same objects in this scene. So here this cube is default white. I'm going to choose something called CW box map. You can see it's a fake user, so that means it cannot be deleted in this scene. So I'll click on that. I'm going to click the ball, do the same thing, and actually I'm going to go in here in this floor. I'm going to use the same material. So if we zoom up, we'll see this is a little bit of a brushed material, and it's a default material. So we'll go into the object and we'll look at this. And if you look at it, it's a material that's included with this scene that I've created that gives you some instructions on it. So to adjust the color, we use these tools in here. And right now we have a texture. So this is the texture, it's a brushed texture. And then what I want to do is I'm going to load a different texture. So I'll come in here, use file from current directory, and then say I will load from my wood tile folder my most recent wood floor distressed. If I look at my tiles, we'll see it's this one. I have one at 90 degrees and one at horizontal. I'll explain that in a minute. So I've added that. So now we have a texture. Now I'm going to go in here and I am going to take the metallic setting and turn it completely off. So now we have our basic wood. It's a very shiny texture because it has a very low roughness coefficient. So to properly set up this material, I'm going to want to disconnect some of these nodes. First, I'm going to take this roughness, I'm going to disconnect it, and now I'm going to take the bump area and disconnect it from the normal. Now you can see that we've got a very, very shiny wood, which is not really what I want. Next, I'm going to go into my roughness and I'm going to actually drag it up so that I think the wood is kind of close to what it should look like. I'm going to use the sphere to help me evaluate that. If this is black on the left and white on the right, it's about 1/3 of the way through. So now that I've got that done, I'm going to go back into it, hook this color up to the roughness, and this is called a color ramp. And the color ramp tells us our roughness for this material. And you can see that right now it looks like it's very shiny. So I'm going to first go in here and I'm going to say reset the color map. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the Control and the Shift key and click on this color map. And what I've done is I'm using Node Wrangler to show what this looks like. So remember, black is shiny, white is dull. So this black right here means that it's a knot in the wood and it's very, very shiny. And I don't want that to be shiny. I want that to be dull. So I'll first go over here and say flip the color ramp. It looks almost all white, which means it's completely dull. So let's go ahead and let's take this black and let's move it down a little bit. And we can start to see that this is probably something we might want to evaluate. So hold the Control Shift key down and click here again. And now we're clicking on the Principled BSDF shader node, and that resets our material. And now we can look at this and go, okay, that might be pretty nice. So this still looks a little rough. And if I press this down and compress this a little more, we'll see that we're getting a little bit more shininess. In fact, I'm going to go at a low angle here. And we'll see that it actually looks even a little bit wet. One way of fixing this is I can just back off. But another way, which is a little more subtle and which can work, and I'm going to go ahead and hold Control Shift again, is I'm going to take this black color and I'm going to move it up so that's not quite as black. There we have it right there. And then Control Shift back on here. And that's quite a bit better. In fact, I might just even compress it just a tad more. Right about there. Looks good. Now let's adjust the bump map. So in our case, We're using this one texture to control both the RGB value, or the diffuse value, of the material, and we're also using a channel of it, in this case the G channel. And then why do we choose the G channel? Well, let's Control Shift and look. That's the R channel, that's the G channel, and that's the B channel. We chose the G channel because it's kind of the middle in terms of contrast. So we're using a black and white channel from the RGB to control the roughness and to control the bump. So let's go into the bump. I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to turn off the roughness, and we will set that at a middle value, maybe a little bit shinier so we can kind of tell what's going on with the bump. And then I'll go ahead and I'll hook up our bump to the normal. So now that we have that done, we can start to look at what's going on with this bump map. Again, I will Control Shift this and I'll see that black is going down, which is good. We want the black to indicate depth. Control Shift back, and I'm going to jack the strength up to 1, and we can see that's way too coarse. And the distance is how far it's going to go. So if I jab that up to 1, you see we've got something that's even worse. So I'm going to go down to 0.1 here, and I'm going to take the strength and move it down to something like 0.1 also. And now I'm starting to see a very subtle depth and bump texture on this object. And that looks pretty good. So I think I'll just leave it right there. And now I'm going to go back and hook up the roughness again. And we'll take a look and see how this overall plays out. So that looks good, but it's important to look at all of our surfaces. That looks pretty good. And I think, so we've now created a tileable textured wood material. Now that's done, let's take a look at it in some other environments. So here we have it in some different HDRI environments, and you're starting to see that it's a little bit shiny over here. Let's kind of go in here. Let's choose an interior, and that's still a little bit shiny. So I might want to actually go back into the roughness one more time as I'm looking at this and pull this back out just a little bit. Now you see that looks probably a little better. Let's go back in and look at one more material. I think that's pretty good. So go back to Eevee, and I am going to go in and clear the bake lighting and then rebake it. There we have it. What if I want the slats on this floor to go in a different direction? That'll be easy. I'm going to take this CW box map and I'm going to hit this copy button. It's going to create a new one, and I'm going to name that 90. So that's going to go a different direction. We still have the CW box map up here and here. It's just on the floor we have a different one. And in this one, I'm going to go in and I'm going to choose the 90-degree version. And when I do that, you'll notice that it completely changed orientation, but it kept all the other settings correct. This comes in handy in situations like this, where we have wood grain go in one direction on one surface, and then we want it to go a different direction on another surface, and yet a different direction on a third surface. So we can create two different texture maps and apply them on each of the different faces as they are needed. Now you may ask, why can't we just do this in the node editor? And the fact is that in box mapping, there is no way to do this. So you do have to use a separate 90-degree texture to accomplish this. So then why would you use this particular material versus an advanced material that has separate images for the roughness and the normal and the metallic and the albedo or RGB or diffuse channel? And the reason for that is, in a scene like the one you're looking at, there are many, many textures, and very soon your graphics card can become filled with all the different texture maps. So by using this less expensive material, you can get many of the same qualities as the more advanced materials, which we'll go over next.